Welcome back, good people, to the Kingly Conversations podcast, man, where we just have hopefully some good conversation for you every single week. As always, man, thanks everybody for listening in. Hey, listen, make sure you go check out the YouTube page. I got to remember to say that because we actually do have content up there. My man Zoe Magnus over here has been doing some hard work on that, getting that going for us. So go check out the YouTube page. It's Kingly Conversations everywhere we are. It is Kingly Conversations, so just Google that. And you will find us. You'll find the podcast. You'll find the YouTube page. You'll find the Facebook page. You'll find the Instagram page. We still don't have a TikTok because I don't feel like doing that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like at some point you got to manage a lot of stuff. And ain't nobody got that kind of time for everything. Man. But again, if we do, guess what? You'll be able to Google Kingly Conversations. Just look for the logo. And you'll know that's us every single time. Word. So, with that said, man, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. I guess. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Please do.
By the way,
appreciate you.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Do it.
If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that bell so you get notified every time.
It'll be right
every time.
Right there, yo.
You get notified every time we upload some new content for you. We're gonna try to get, like I said, we do have more than a year's worth of content that we've got to get edited and up into the YouTube page in some sort of cohesive format. So I mean, you never know. You might wake up tomorrow and there's 415 videos up there. I doubt it, but it could be 2 or 3 a week till we get caught up. As always, though, my name is Alan.
It's your boy Twine, a.k.a. Twine. Ask me about my podcast. Y'all know what it is. Hey, thanks for all the listeners, man. I appreciate y'all. Keep doing what you do, man. I appreciate and love the support. Tell somebody to tell a friend, and then tell the friend to tell another friend.
Your friend, your mentor, Calvin D. Hill.
Bam, 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 bam.
What's the sound of it?
What up?
All right, man. So let's get into it. Apparently, this was my topic as well. Here's the thing, and this. I come up with topics all the time because I'm always just in my head a lot, so I write stuff down. I used to do it in a journal, but since we got the podcast, now you essentially get to get insight into what goes on in my mind. But so today we're talking about why is politics so hard? Why is it so difficult? And I would almost even dare say that it's always been difficult. I think we are just more aware of it now than we used to be, because now it's more polarizing than it has been in recent memory. So anybody want to? Oh, you put definitions. What was that definition you got?
Because the set activities that are associated with decision making. So basically, I started with this. Why should people get involved in politics? And one of the biggest reasons, me personally now understanding some things, is the decision-making process for distributing your resources. That's a big one for me. So that's a good reason to get involved, to understand, especially on your local levels, how the city is using their money, what are they putting their money to, how are they helping business owners, and things like that. That's important now, because I didn't know and didn't understand that before, and still don't have a full grasp on political science or how politics work. So that's a good reason why I wanted Alan to start with this show, because I think all of us need to hear this. All of us need to at least take note of it, especially, like you said, in the recent years, we had a lot of turmoil and extremes, especially with Democrats and Republicans, and some people feel like Obama was the worst president ever, and other people feel like Trump was the worst president ever, and all this so forth and so on, by in the face. But either way, yeah, because a lot of it is, to me, is people are just really buying the faces. They don't want to admit it. A lot of people did vote for Obama because he was black. A lot of people did vote for Trump because he was white. Man, whatever. It's that's how simple some people kept it.
Yeah.
And it's just being truthful. But we need to understand how that affects our day-to-day. So, go ahead, Alan.
So, Well, we're gonna just rattle off these questions. So
Okay.
where did you start to learn
Can I
about?
say?
Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry.
I do apologize.
Because as you were saying, what you just said about how people correlate the faces
Mm-hmm.
of politics with the president, for me, I don't. The power is within. They're just the face of it. They don't control. They have input on what we should or what we shouldn't be doing as the people of the United States, but they don't have the power. The power is in the other levels that's underneath them to control stuff. But anyway, that's old. That's nothing new.
Okay.
But I just want to say that. It just rubbed me the wrong way.
Right. But a lot of people, like a guy tried to start an argument with me yesterday at work. I mean,
So we
seriously.
jumping into it?
Yeah,
We're gonna get
well,
these questions?
slightly. But we're gonna.
Okay.
I'm just make the comment, and then, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm handing to Alan
Yeah.
because he tried to say, "Oh, Trump saved the country." Hey, man.
How, Sway?
Anyway,
All right, let's
all
move
right,
on.
come on.
Let's move on. What was your question, Alan?
Well, I'll usually ask questions about that kind of thing too, because my thing is, and I answer it on both sides really, because my thing is, you should be able to defend your position with actual facts, not defending your position with emotions, or defending your position with biases, or defending your position with beliefs. You should be able to say, well, based on this study, or based on this
These
that I
facts,
read,
yeah.
based on this that I looked up because you didn't research it because you don't have a budget, but based on this information, that is why. But what I was asking was, where did you start to learn about politics? Did you start to learn about politics at all at an early age? Was it not until you were an adult? Because in a lot of households, it's not even something that is discussed at all, unless you come from a house where your parents like kind of were always voted, took you to vote with them, even though you couldn't vote. Those kind of households, they might have discussed it, but like in my house, politics was never an issue of a topic of discussion growing up.
Well,
In fact, my mother hadn't even voted until, and part of it was because she didn't know she could vote. She hadn't, she was in the Army and traveling all over the place, so she didn't know where she was supposed to vote, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I voted before my mother had ever voted. First time I voted would have probably been in Iraq. Would have probably been the first time I voted. Maybe that was the second time. I don't recall for sure. But I know I voted in Iraq because I remember getting the letter and the letter that we had to send back.
Yep. I think the first time I voted was Iraq. No, it was the one before. I think so. The first Bush.
Might have been. That would have been 04.
Yeah.
2000 and 04.
Yep, that was my first time voting because we graduated 2000. I graduated 2000, and I didn't vote that year. Okay.
So, but was
anyway,
that something that was taught in the house?
Yeah,
like,
my parents, because my mom was Democrat, my dad was Republican, and they would have heated discussions, and most of the time, my dad based most of his decision making on, at the time, biblical standards, and that's a lot of the play that I've seen on politics is Christian, so-called Christian values. So those were discussions that they had in front of us, and it was always funny to me that neither parties covered all bases.
They don't.
Neither party. And I've always looked at that and said, we getting played. Because, and I saw it in my own house. So one, like I said, Democrat, one Republican. And he said, oh, the people, and take care of the people in the black community, whatever, such and this and that, so forth and so on, with the values and Bible-based. And I'm like, okay, how are both of you this, but when it comes to that, it don't match. Mm-hmm. So I always looked at, okay, they're doing that to everybody, and no party covers all bases. So I've always looked at it as, okay, you got to kind of take the good and the bad when you're choosing. So I never, and not until I became an adult did I actually glance. I didn't dive into it deep enough because I had other things going on. But I need to now, especially now, because I don't understand the foundation of either parties. I don't understand the basis of either parties. And if you keep the further I go back in history, I'm like, okay, this isn't helping. It's not
So
helping.
when you say foundation, like
I
what the
mean,
parties believe,
what the parties believe,
well,
and why
that's
they
gonna
were
be the
built.
problem. Yeah, the further back you go, it's not gonna help.
You see,
because
okay, somebody switched up the narrative. Somebody switched up the
Yes.
dialogue because Republicans were actually for one, and then the Democrats
you'll
were.
find that
It was
happen.
like, okay, so
especially
who
yeah.
are we for?
Yeah, sir.
Know your history, man. Get your knowledge up. First of all, I just want to say that, reflecting on what you just said. Second, in our household coming up, politics was not really talked about until Obama was running for president. That's it.
Okay.
So there was no discussions. There was no. It was a Democratic based house just because that was a thing to do, or that was I. But see, again, I don't know why
It was
they
like that.
were like that because they never discussed
Yeah.
what they thought their values were and why they agreed with X, Y, and Z.
Well, can I be? I'm gonna just kind of be real. A lot of my family, because they were black, and it really, to me, really went no further than that. And it was sad to say that, but a lot of people in my family, and maybe other listeners too, because they feel like black people should go with the Democratic Party because the Democrats take care of black people, and it's not true.
It's not.
But that's what
You know where that started though.
The narrative.
and I think I do, but I don't know 100%. And I'm gonna go look it up. And I'm saying, okay, how can you say that when they could just be lying to you?
Well,
But-
yeah,
but-
I think that certainly is it. I mean, we didn't talk about
yeah.
what.
No, I just been reading the book and I just made. I don't even know if this connection is real, but the more people you have, the more power you have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just based off the numbers. So that's all. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
even back in the day when your value of wealth was according to how many people you had. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on.
so we didn't discuss politics really at all. And now I do remember watching Jesse Jackson. I don't remember why. It wasn't really discussed as far as why we were paying attention to when Jesse Jackson was running for president. I remember watching Ross Perot run for president, but I don't remember why I was paying attention to that. It wasn't something that it wasn't a discussion that was had of why I was paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
I may have just been paying attention to it on my own. It may have just been the only thing on the TV, but I do remember paying attention to Ross Perot's campaign back in the day, and then I was watching Jesse Jackson for
brief time.
reasons, that brief time. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to William Jefferson Clinton and that election cycle. I didn't really pay a lot of attention then, but I was also in high school, so or going into high school, middle school, and some of it too was for a time I lived overseas, so I wasn't. Other than the fact that my mother was in the military, there wasn't. If you don't live in the U.S. at the time, it wasn't as important for everybody to at least know what was going on in the U.S. So it didn't affect me whatsoever, because I didn't live. I had to abide by, for the most part, the laws of the country of Panama. You still had your American on-base laws, but if you were out in town, you were abiding by those laws.
Right.
So it was more important to know what was going on there. So it wasn't something that was really ever discussed, although I did think it was important to vote, because one thing I always knew is if you didn't vote, then you didn't exercise your right to choose. You didn't exercise your voice. Now, what I wasn't doing early on was, like, now I vote in everything. Like, every time the ballot box is open, I'm putting my opinion in the ballot box. And it's always amazing to me that for presidential elections, it's so crowded, but then everything else, the important stuff, the more important stuff, I should say, nobody's there. Like if some of these polling stations have 1,000 people all day for like city council, it's a lot on those days. So, because like when this last election cycle, I went and early voted at the precinct, and there were like 8 people there. But and that was because I voted early.
Mm-hmm.
If I and they only had specified times you could do it. If I had gone to my regular polling place, I've gone in and it's nobody but me and the officials at the time that I voted. But that's never happened during the first time that Obama got elected. I was standing at the annex to go in line all the way back to the annex to go vote at Indian River Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that was a 30, 45-minute line to stand in to vote. And it seems like it's that way for every presidential election. But
and everything in between.
But all the local stuff does not bring, the local elections don't bring the boys to the yard for whatever reason. They just don't.
So why do you think it's so why do you think it's so hard for one for people to understand that's not even up here, but one, why do you think it's so hard for people to understand it?
That local is important, or to understand politics in general?
Yeah, both. Like for the local reasons, why don't people feel like that's important?
I think that people don't think local is important because it is not on this constant media cycle that people have us on, right? Because you're gonna, for an example, they talked about it during the first election where Donald Trump got elected, that he was getting billions of dollars in free publicity from the news just because of his tweets and the stuff that he was saying. He was getting billions of dollars of free advertising. Your local councilman is not even getting thousands of dollars of free advertising. Right? If they want to be on the news, they're going to have to pay to be on the news to talk about. And even then, it's not even, a lot of times, it's not even worthwhile, because if you're running for city council in Norfolk, there's not a lot of reason for you to be on the news in Virginia Beach because they can't vote for you. Right? Now, if they have relatives in the city, they can say, hey, are you going to vote for so-and-so? But that's about as close as you're going to get. Whereas in a presidential or state election, they can really exercise those news channels and really get some benefit out of actually being on the news. So I think that's part of it. I think media is part of it. And then the other part of why it's so hard, I think, goes back to your parents. Because it is and was a deeply held belief that the Republican Party was the party of Christianity, and you believe in Christianity wholeheartedly.
It's sold that way.
It's sold that way. It is sold that way. And it ain't true. It ain't never been true.
Right.
I think that's what makes it so difficult, because now you have to, in your mind at least, you have to go against your religion, your God, in order to vote for something else. And so people get violently opposed to that idea, because then it makes them have to question all the other things that they've thought about. But again, ain't neither party. Ain't none of these parties.
Neither one is really. You can almost throw the book out the window if you want to line it up against that.
And if we were to be truthful, the Constitution was written so that there wouldn't be religion in government. But you add people. You add people. So. Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. What you got over there, sir? I see you over there scrolling.
No. Yeah, of course, I got to read up on stuff before I talk about it. To answer Calvin's question, why don't people think or are they aware of local voting? Well, I think the question should be is why don't they care enough? Because if a person was out here thinking about politics and being involved and diving into it and understanding how it really goes, then they would take the time to go out there and vote for the local people that actually make the change directly versus it's like the Super Bowl with the politics, man. The big one is when the president is when the president is doing it or going up for election. So.
But I think most people are distracted with their own lives, so they don't take the time to look at how all of it affects them overall. To me, it is what it is. But why? Okay.
So here's an example of I think what why I think people should be concerned for one way or another. So I think this is actually slightly old, but there was a line item on the ballot to allow tax breaks to disabled veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to,
that was I remember that.
But most people didn't even know it existed prior to them stepping in the booth. They didn't even know it existed. And then two, because you didn't know it existed, you're relying on that summary to tell you what this actually is. What this 30, 40, 50-page bill could be based on a paragraph summary that might not really out. Because, the problem we got, at least to me in our country, is a lot of times you're voting on an entire package of stuff. And that package may contain stuff you don't want in addition to the single thing that you may want. And I think that's where we get into trouble as well, as far as not paying enough attention. Okay. I mean, and so to me, it's like, if I look at I look at the calendar and I say, okay, what elections are coming up this year? And then I try to make sure I put that on the calendar so that prior to the election, I can say, okay, what issues are going to be on the ballot? Let me look up those issues so that I walk in the booth knowing exactly how I'm going to vote. Okay. I'm very rarely surprised by what's on the ballot because I looked it up.
So next question, why does that have to be a two major party system? Why do we have that?
There
because
doesn't
of a disagreement. Well, why do we?
Yeah. Do we?
He
said we don't need it.
We don't have. Well,
we've always had somewhat of a split.
The very first president of the United States of America.
Talking about the Republicans?
No, he wasn't a Republican. There wasn't a Republican Party at the time.
Who's talking about?
George Washington.
First president.
He was a Federalist.
Okay, he was a Federalist.
Yeah. So there was no Republican Party. Republican Party was born out of disagreements in the Federalist Party that created Thomas Jefferson and his cronies created the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't, and George Washington warned against having a two-party system because he knew it would turn into division, because it would be my side versus your side as opposed to it being our side and let's come together to try to figure stuff out. So it started out with the Federalist Party, and then now they've had smaller parties, other than just Republicans and Democrats over the years. But that's what it ended up being. It was the Federalist Party at first, and then Thomas Jefferson and his piece broke away from the Federalist Party and started the Republican Party, and then the Democratic Party came later after that too. But
are there any other parties?
There are a ton of other parties. It's just the problem in our country is
got faded out when it got split, right?
Yep. Yeah. Essentially, they were around for like the first two elections after that, and then they kind of just
phased out.
But they have because if you remember, well, I don't know if not remember, but like Abraham Lincoln was actually not. He was a Whig. Yeah. And then, but that got kind of absorbed into the Republican Party.
For the listeners, the Whig is referring to the Republican Party.
W-H-I-G. Yeah. But at the time, they wouldn't have been seen as what we think of as Republicans now. So, so there have been other parties throughout time. The problem is now, if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, or if you don't say you're a Republican or a Democrat, then you have very little chance to get elected. Anything beyond local elections, right? You might get elected locally. You might get elected mayor. You might get elected city council. But beyond that, even getting state, you probably won't get elected there.
Unless you pick a party.
Because the problem is you're going to need the backing of some other political pundit for you to win anything, and that's where I think we start getting into a lot of trouble. So it doesn't have to be two major parties, but because of the two major parties, it really doesn't allow you to. I think they should abolish all the political parties and just say you got to run on your own merits. You can't run with friends. That
ain't gonna happen.
I know it ain't gonna happen because that would get rid of the power structure. And no, people do not. The only way people give up power is violently. No one has ever given up power peacefully.
Facts.
Look. Oh, let me. You can look at history. You can quote it. Nobody who has had power ever gives it up peacefully.
So why do us as the general public? Why do we identify as one or the other? Why do we do that?
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself. I am not a.
I'm not. I'm definitely not.
I'm not a Republican or a Democrat.
I'm definitely not.
So you would vote either. You would vote either way.
And here's the problem that you run into. This is the problem that you run into now. Is certainly if you if you vote Republican today, then people are going to give you this, for whatever the reason. It doesn't matter who it is. If you vote Republican, they're going to side eye you because today Republican is so closely aligned with Trump. So as soon as you say Republican, people just hear Trump.
Now after the fact,
yeah. So that's all you get. If you're a Republican, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you're a Republican. As soon as you say Republican, they just hear Trump.
That's crazy.
And all of his food. Now you could. The crazy thing is, you could be a Republican and not voted for Trump, right. But people will still say nope, Trump. They will still tie you to Trump, even if you didn't vote for him. Right. So I think that's where the problem is today. So people feel like they have to be in whatever clique it is, that you have to be in one clique or another.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Because you're just voting because it's a donkey or just
oh my God.
Or
I mean, that's what it is, the donkey and elephant.
I just read up on why the donkey became the Democratic.
Why?
Why is that?
Why?
It was saying that in the argument they called him a jack something. I don't want to say it. Well, I hope y'all fill in the blanks yourselves. And instead of rebuking that, he just kind of accepted it because they were trying to say that he was unintelligent and that he was a fool's person.
Mm-hmm. So why the elephant?
I didn't get to that part yet. I just read the donkey part.
All right.
I'm starting.
Okay.
Do my little research, but with that being, back to what I was saying. So instead of learning what the person politics is and their views and thoughts are, instead of reading on that, you just look at the R and the D, and you just vote based upon those two letters versus taking the time to do some research and read on who you're voting for.
Absolutely.
Like when I vote, I don't all the R, the D, the I, whatever letter that is behind that person's name and what they represent. I don't care nothing about that. But what are your policies on gun control and or on guns? What is your policies on education and things of that nature? What are your policies on what are your perspectives and what is your drive and what is your goal and what is your mission to do is what I'm researching on. So when people say put on the sticker and say I voted, kudos to you. Good job, Larry. But I'm just like, what else other than the letters what did you vote for exactly is my question.
And I think that's where we get into it, because one of the things that and it is what it is. I mean, I know it's not going to change, but like for some reason, like single issue voters bother me.
Single issue voters?
Meaning they will take a somebody who has murdered 64 people and raped 300, but as long as they are supporters of the Second Amendment, none of that rest of that matters. And that's the part that bothers me. It's like, so regardless of this person's character, as long as they support an issue that I support, I will support them. And I think that is essentially where I know a ton of people that are single issue voters. That as long as the person is against abortion, it doesn't matter what else they're for, I'm going to vote for them. Or as long as the person is for universal health care, it doesn't matter what else they're for, I'm going to vote for them. And I'm like we got to look at the whole person. Like we got to look at all of it, because you could certainly, I mean, you could be voting in Nero just because you like their stance on gun control. If you don't know, look up Nero and what he did. Essentially, he burned down half of Rome so he could build a palace. But so you could be voting in someone like that simply because you like their stance on one issue. And that's where I think we have a problem. Because my thing is, let's look, at least pick 5 issues that you like the person for. At least 5, 6, something.
People can't name one.
They can't name one.
No, and this is, and understand, this is not throwing shade to anybody out there that does that. I'm just encouraging, or would like to encourage you to do a little research, know what you're voting for. But then those same people complain about what's going on, but they have, like, as far as, especially in the local area, how I feel as if, now this is just my perspective, if you're not putting in the time to do your research and voting for the people running locally, then you have no room to complain. That's just my thought. I definitely, when my first time getting into politics, I wouldn't say getting into politics, but just for voting, definitely did a lot of research. I went to their websites and I read upon what their policies was. Also did a history check on, because some people out here were running, I'm not going to say the names.
They were running Democrats before they went to Republicans.
No, I'm not even saying that. Some people won't even paying child support, but they running for what do you call them, places and like council and school boards and things like that. Like, yo, what are you doing? I'm not voting for you. Like, how you gonna get? You can't even get your house in order. You trying to run for something, man? Get out of here. But all that to say this, I did the research and found out the things I needed to know based upon how I felt about how things should be run, and I voted on that versus So I'm just encouraging. Back to what I was saying. Encouragement, man. Do some research.
Which is true. I mean, because my thing is whatever. As long as my thing is, as long as it's not a single issue, then and you're voting on because you vote, because all of these votes are going to be on packages anyway. So you need to know that they have your interest in mind, and all of them, not just the one, because you could essentially be. Like in the case of local elections, you could say, okay, yeah, I like this person because they're not gonna institute a ban on anything gun related, but then they bulldoze the neighborhood you live in.
Right. Yeah.
And it was on their platform that they were going to do it, but you just said, oh, well, you know what, Second Amendment, yeah. Now you out here having to move because they're bulldozing your neighborhood to make way for a casino.
Shout out.
And this is my thing. I just wrote this down, but this is my thing, and this is why I think that we should be doing research. Is that we should just assume that they're lying to you. Assume that they're going to say whatever they got to say to get elected, and then go and research and find out if what they're saying is where they actually stand.
Okay.
Don't just take their word for it. Say, okay, well, how have you voted? How have you, and then understand the voting process, because I think that's also a part of the problem. Is people don't understand the voting process, and understand that when you're seeing these ads, these political ads, you are seeing, because they'll say, okay, well, this person voted for this, but you don't realize the candidate that you're looking at also voted for the same thing. So they're out here running an ad saying they're going to take away such and such. The same person that you're looking at voted for the exact same thing as the person they're talking about. Because something like, for an example, the people talk about the crime bill. The crime bill of the 90s passed in a landslide. Like almost everybody voted for it that was in Congress at the time. Both House and Senate. Almost everybody voted for the bill. It was a terrible bill. But we know that now. We have the benefit of hindsight. But almost everybody, black, white, indifferent, Democrat, Republican, indifferent, almost everybody voted for this bill. And now we're holding it against them, which I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we got to look at everybody that voted for the bill. If we're gonna hold it against I'm gonna keep that same energy. So if we're gonna say this person voted for the bill, so this, okay, well this person also voted for the bill, so what about them?
What's the difference? Yeah.
What about them? We should hold them in the same. We should tar and feather them as well.
Tar and feather. All right.
Also, you check the thing, but I don't think we actually talked about it. I don't think there was ever a time when opposing viewpoints were civil with one another. If we have this romanticized version of history, especially when it came to the founding of the United States of America, we have this romanticized version of it. Hey, these people did not like each other. They were in these rooms going at it to get this Constitution done.
So they look like they answered that first one.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the country was started with conflict, so it's not surprising to me that we can't get along because there's been conflict since the beginning. I mean, I think the human experience is an experience of periods of conflict and periods of peace, and where those places are changes all the time. So even in countries that look relatively peaceful, that doesn't mean there's not civil unrest in the country. It's just not big enough that it makes national and international headlines. But there are always people that are dissenters, right? No matter what you do, there are going to be dissenters. There were dissenters under the king. That's why they left, right? So that's just the human condition, I think, at this point.
Why can't we all just get along?
That's what Rodney King asked after they beat him up.
Yeah, I don't think we ever get along or everybody get on the same page. Never. That's never gonna happen. So
I don't think.
Good luck.
I think part of that's because we want different things. I also think that living in a city or living in a more urban area is a vastly different experience than living in a rural area. Completely different experiences. Yeah. And I think people look at it as though it's one unified experience when it really isn't. Somebody's life that lives in the city is a completely different life and lifestyle than somebody who doesn't. Yep. Because there are some viewpoints that you can afford to have if you live in a rural area that you can't afford to have when you start living in closer proximity to people. I mean, because if you live in a town of 500, that's vastly different than living in an apartment building of 1,000.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Because now you have to make way for other people. When you live in close proximity, you have to be able to navigate that lifestyle. So you have to make room for other people and their thoughts, beliefs, ideas, even just in the hallway. You got to make room all the time. You just got to make room. Whereas in the country, you don't have to make room for anything if you don't want to.
If you don't want to, I don't want to.
So.
All right, Calvin, you're crashing, bro.
Hey,
you ain't got your coffee in today?
Nope. No, I did not.
Over here yawning, man.
I'm going to have to get my coffee.
All right, so in closing, what we got? Why is politics so hard, Calvin?
To me, politics is hard. One, because people aren't informed enough to make a decision on which way they want to go. Two, it's just a difference of opinion. Nobody has 100% of the same views on anything. So what did, we took the majority issues and divided them. That's what it looked like to me, but that's why it's so hard.
Do your research, people. That's all I'm asking. And if you're not out voting and you're not taking the time to, well, let me rephrase that. If you're not researching the people that you're voting for, then why are you complaining? You've allowed this to come upon yourself, man. That's all I gotta say about that, man. Do your research.
Hey, listen, man. Politics is hard because it's always been hard. It's been hard from day one because politics at its core is a game of compromise. It's I want to get this, you don't want to give me that, but if I give you this,
yeah, give me that.
Will you let me have what I'm looking for as well? And that's where I think that all of the issues start. It's people don't, by their nature, want to compromise because they want what they want and really don't care about what other people want. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, I think that that has then bled into politics because that's the human condition, and then that politics bleeds back into society because then you have all these people voting on issues thinking that, well, I voted this way, so this is how it should be, when it's majority, it has to be the majority of the votes for whatever the issue is, for whatever the person is. So just because you voted one way doesn't mean that, and people have to understand that, like, I think part of that problem is people think that they're going to win simply because they voted. Like, no, you can vote and lose. I mean, there's a reason that there's only one champion at the end of a sports season. You might have been really good, but you just weren't better than them at this particular game. So that's where I think the problem is people think, and we see it all the time. So that's why politics is hard. I don't think that there's ever going to be a solution to it. I do think that people could, in our country, they probably won't be, but could be more civil about it. But I don't think we're ever going to get away from politics being hard because at its very core, it's a game of compromise. And who is willing to compromise the most to get what it is that they want pushed through? We'll see y'all next week.
Informed, man. I love it. Yeah.
Definitely was. Oh, I was about to say something too about it was something I thought about that I didn't want to bring up during the thing.